Welcome to the Science and Beers podcast with me, Michael Magee. Talking science and drinking beers with researchers down at the pub. So join us with a brew and let's cheers to science. I watched the Danish movie Druk recently. In English it's called Another Round, and it won the Oscar for Best International Feature Film just about a week ago. It's directed by Thomas Vinterberg and starring Mads Mikkelsen. So I'd very much recommend the movie, and if you have not watched the movie, this podcast will contain a lot of spoilers because we're going to be really getting into the storyline from the next sentence onwards. So basically the theme is 4 40-year-old teachers feel that life is a little bit too boring and they're a little bit too dull, and even their students are complaining about this, so they decide to first of all, based on a Norwegian psychiatrist, Finn Skålderud, said that the human body was born with missing about 0.05% alcohol in the blood. They had a theory that maintaining a little bit of alcohol in the blood throughout the day would increase their lust for life. So they set about doing it, and they set about doing it in a scientific way. They wanted to record the results so they could publish it in a paper. So naturally, being the host of the Science and Beers podcast, I thought this movie was right up my alley. But then it got me thinking, what would happen to the human body in both short and long term if you maintained an alcohol blood concentration of 0.05%? And I actually called up a scientist who specializes in this area, and he gave me this answer.
We know that everybody, if they're a little stressed, a little tense, if they get a little bit of alcohol, then they are basically more nice, they are less shy. So what it does, it removes a little bit of the brakes in the brain, and it starts with the front of the brain. And the front of the brain is what controls the rest, and so all of our spontaneity, etc. So I think in the short run, it's just like what we pursue when we drink alcohol. We want to enjoy that we get a little bit drunk.
Yeah.
Then I think what happens in the long run is actually just like when we do some different types of drugs, is actually let the drug get accustomed to it. So alcohol is kind of a nutrient. It's metabolized faster. And then what you will discover is just like the same thing as these 4 high school teachers experienced. They want more. Sooner or later, half a promille is good, but if half is good, why not a whole one? We always want more, and the effect is sort of wearing off and you want more. So that's why we have these millions of people who actually, they end up becoming dependent. Of course, we are different. And then you have many different effects of long-term alcohol that are really bad. So I can unfold them if you want.
So you're saying that if we tried to maintain, as what happened in the movie, the body would process the alcohol faster, and therefore you'd lose these effects.
Yes. So also when you drink, have you noticed? Those of us who are sober once in a while, when you drink the first drink, so when I get home tomorrow night, I will probably drink something because, it's Friday, it's a holiday. And then the biggest change you actually experience is from 0 to just a little bit, because that's where the brain is. So that comes very, very fast. Mm-hmm. And these things will change if you get accustomed to it. So many of those who are alcohol dependent, they actually have a certain promille to just operate. Because if it gets lower, then they get withdrawal symptoms. So actually, we want is just like with the drugs, when people do cocaine, etc. It's actually the change we like. That's the rush. The change from doing a little bit, from being sober, and then have the effect.
You are listening to Dr. Aleksander Krag. Dr. Aleksander is an expert in liver fibrosis and chronic alcoholic liver disease. So if there's anybody that's going to be able to answer these questions, it is Aleksander. Aleksander is Professor and Senior Consultant of Hepatology and Director of the Odense Liver Research Centre at the University of Southern Denmark and the Odense University Hospital. Aleksander has recently joined the Danish Institute for Advanced Study as a Chair of Heath Science. And the more you use a drug, alcohol being one of them, the harder it is to get that.
Yes, but the beneficial effect is changing. And that's why people then they tend to drink more and more. And that's exactly what we see in the movie. And you also see the way it unfolds, that we have these four super charming high school teachers, some of the best actors, I think, not only in Denmark, some of them really world class. And so that's why this film is so fascinating, because alcohol is sort of also a thing that makes us social. You know, everybody are happy when they're a little bit drunk. They don't mind hugging each other. They forget all the bad things in life, and that's why that's a part of the Danish national spirit. And now you're also from a country where they like to drink a lot there in Ireland, and the same in the neighboring in Scotland and England. So it's so the downside. Now I'm a doctor, and cheers. Is actually that it's. Now let's take the good side. So that's why in anything we do, you can hardly be together 2 Danes without offering the other one a beer. And even though, when you have people baptizing or you go to a funeral, you need a beer or alcohol every time. So bring your car if you don't want to drink. That's the only legal excuse, I guess.
In Ireland, yes, we like to go out for a couple of pints, maybe after work. It could be on a Wednesday. We have a few more drinks in the weekend, but we have a reputation for drinking a lot. But from my observations, the Danes are really outpacing the Irish there. One thing that really surprised me, I've been invited to do a lot of, say, garden work in Denmark, or helping a friend out to move, and the first thing you're offered at 10 o'clock in the morning is a beer. Which means at 12 o'clock, I'm completely exhausted. I'm all worked out. I can't do any more lifting.
So it's a social thing. So it's unbelievable. 6% of the population is actually dying from the consequences of alcohol. So that's really serious. It's
6%.
Yeah, 6%. So it's one of the main drivers of mortality in our country and also across the world. And that 3,000 Danes, they die every year due to alcohol.
Wow.
So imagine that this is not something that is coming. This is some self-inflicted. Actually, basically, this is something you could avoid 100%. Imagine, so just to put it in perspective, we would think that things like breast cancer is a problem. It certainly is. But in Denmark, maybe we have 3 times as many people dying from alcohol-related diseases than from breast cancer. It's estimated that 10 to 12% of all cancers actually could have been avoided if we didn't drink. So the health consequences of having all this fun and all for all those who cannot really control are huge. That's why we worry and we try to. Or it's an ongoing debate. How strict should we be? So Denmark is basically very liberal. You can buy alcohol from you're 16. In many other countries, you need to be 18. We have no restrictions on alcohol advertising. We have no restriction on alcohol availability. Meaning that there's also this European record that the young people in Denmark are the young people in Europe and probably in the world who drink most. And this is kind of worrisome for young people with actually brains that are not fully developed. And there are actually data suggesting that it actually can impact the brain already at that level and make that you're more susceptible to, at the later stage, that's also documented scientifically, to be more likely to be alcohol dependent. And if we get back to the movie, the movie starts with these beautiful young people. They have this famous lake run in Copenhagen, where you need to drink and drink and drink, and it's one big party. And that's also the way the movie ends. So it's a celebration for alcohol for life. But if we just should pick on the dark side, because it is also showing, Thomas Bo Larsen, Tommy, he's the character Tommy, and he actually also in his personal life, it's well known that he's been alcoholic himself for many years already since he was a youngster, 13, 14 years old. He started with alcohol. He has also done cocaine, all kinds of things. So for him, he tasted the dark side of it. And now he's completely sober. And actually, he also in some interview admit that it was pretty tough doing the movie Druk, because it was actually resembling of all the dark sides. So actually, his character, if for those who have not really seen it, he's part of this game of having this promille, and then they accelerate more in the weekend, more when the wives are away, and he ended up dying. You know, he loses completely control, kicked out of school, kicked out of the social network there with these guys, enjoying the show. So he's really showing the dark side there.
What causes this this craving, this addictive personality?
We don't exactly know it. So we know there's been many studies in genetics, because people say this runs in the family, and it probably do. But it seems that lots of the variation we cannot really explain by genetics. Then, as I alluded to before, there's also something about those who start very early. Yes. There is something when the immature brain is getting used to this, they are also having a higher risk of being alcohol dependent. And then the third thing, which is also, so now we should embrace actually our hangovers, because it turns out that those people who do get hangovers, they tend not to be alcohol dependent. So basically, they have the fun, but they also have the pay the price afterwards. But those who does not get it, they only get the upside, but not the downside. And that is actually a dangerous thing.
That sounds like a dangerous thing. Which brings me to my next question. Whenever I was 18, 22, no hangovers, but now I'm 30, soon to be 30, 35 on Saturday actually. I get a killer hangover if I get three pints of beers. What's going on, and is there anything I can do to stop this?
So obviously, you were drinking more by that time. Your body was more accustomed to it. Actually, it's around how alcohol is metabolized. So alcohol is uptake of alcohol is super fast already in the mouth, actually in the stomach, and further down. We have also studied that. But then it's metabolized in mainly basically in the liver to a substance called acetaldehyde. So which is basically a toxin for the body. That's what's causing both the headache, it's causing, the stomach ache, it's causing flushing, all these things. And that can only be metabolized relatively slow unless you have an induced enzyme system. And then you can metabolize it faster and you can tolerate a lot more. So some people can get some flushing, they can get very severe pain in the stomach. It can also impact the brain. And then it actually changes the way that the kidneys handle water. That's alcohol itself, because it actually blocks a hormone in the brain called antidiuretic hormone. That's why you pee so much. I guess everybody, you think it's all the pints, but it's more than this actually. And that's what leads to the dehydration.
That's also that. Okay.
So you have in the brain, you have this hormone that is excreted there that goes to the kidney and holds back water. That's super important for our survival, basically. But alcohol has an effect where it actually reduces the release of this hormone, which means that the kidney is less effective in holding back water. So we always say, when you start peeing, then it's never gonna stop. You just pee and pee and pee, and you drink more, and then you're completely drying out, and that's what you feel when you wake up completely hammered. So it metabolizes from alcohol from an enzyme called alcohol dehydrogenases to acetaldehyde, and that's the one that breaks you down, that makes you gives you the hangover. And then it breaks further down to fatty acids. That's also why we see when people drink hard, then the liver become completely congested with fat. So it ends up there. So that's basically the first step. I don't know. I can tell you the full story of how you end up with a cirrhotic liver and die from liver failure, but that's a long story.
We'll not get into that just now.
No.
But perhaps for somebody like me, Alexander, because you study how the liver does end up in a bad condition, and you get liver cirrhosis and the unfortunate and end up dying from it. Just what quantities of alcohol are we talking about here? On what time scales do you have to really put your body through so much alcohol poisoning that it becomes a serious problem?
That's a very, very good question. That's actually something that has been discussed. Now you're talking to a scientist. We cannot come with simple answers. Sorry for that. But the problem is actually we don't really know. But if I can tell you a secret, if you don't share it with anybody else, the issue is actually that if you take 50 people who drink a lot, it will only be very few of them who develop liver diseases. Most of us tolerate alcohol very, very well. The only reason why alcohol is a big problem is because everybody drink. Otherwise, we actually tolerated it very well. And we don't exactly know. And it turns out actually that some people also have that in departments. Sometimes we have people, I have a guy, he's 87, and he only just has been drinking all the way, and he only got his liver diseases now. I think that's pretty good. But then we also have people in the early 30s, your age, who are dying. We cannot transplant because they cannot drink, or they cannot stop drinking, and therefore we cannot transplant. So there's a huge variation, and we don't exactly know what is actually driving this. And then back to the relation between how much can you actually tolerate and where does it become a health problem. So the health authorities, and that's also what we allude to, is actually they say 7 for women, 14 for men a week. Mm-hmm. Probably, I think if we go for liver diseases, you could say 14 for women, 21 for men. That's the higher limit. Mm-hmm. So there we know it's harmful. There you will have a linear or sharp increase in mortality and liver diseases and many other diseases.
Okay, so stick to the recommended guidelines is the best advice we've got.
Yeah, the best. We can also say that it's safe not to drink.
Well, there would be no science in beers.
No, that's right. No, I think another rule of thumb is basically you shouldn't drink every day. And again, if you want to be good to your liver and to your body, we like to get drunk, pissed, whatever, but never drink more than 5 at the same time. And if you don't drink every day, 5 should be pretty good. The issue is that some people can drink 10, 15, 20. We have some people who are very accustomed to, and that is really soaking your body in alcohol. So that's a bad thing. So some of these very, very simple advices can actually prevent you, because if you don't, you have some breaks, then your liver, your body will basically recover from these things. It's another very interesting note to feel the movie Druk.
Yes.
Again, to they have some of these people they look up to. One of the reasons, you remember the teacher who teaches history, then he'd give them 4 people. They should guess who. And then he'd tell them about the guy who drinks 2 bottles of whiskey and drinks champagne and drink 8 cigars. That's Churchill. And then he takes about Hemingway, who also basically drank like a fish, and he won the Nobel Prize and written one of the best books ever written. And then he talks about Franklin D. Roosevelt, the only American president who elected 4 times, Uh-huh. So these are the smoking proof that a little bit, or probably a lot of alcohol is very good.
Yeah, that's a few examples on that end of the spectrum, but there's another end of the spectrum.
Exactly. And that's the kind of characters we love to celebrate, those who can actually handle it. Yeah. So that's also used as their saints, the proof that it may not work.
Well, the bars in Denmark are slowly opening here. And I'll tell you what, the first night that they did open, it was not a pretty sight.
Oh.
Yeah.
We're all desperate. I also look so much forward to go out for a bar and have a big, nice draft beer.
I'm going to do that tomorrow. First time in a while, so I'm looking forward to it. Yeah.
Very good.
Thanks so much for coming in at such short notice.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye. Cheers.
So you're listening to Dr. Aleksander Krag. He's a medical doctor. He's also a researcher. It's so great that he answered my last minute curious question about about the Druk experiment. I want to give you a final anecdote that was also from the movie. You had people such as Ernest Hemingway, Franklin Roosevelt, great drinkers of our age, very successful people. But you also had a man who didn't drink, very rarely drunk, maybe occasionally had the odd beer. And his name was Adolf Hitler. I'll let you think about that. I'm your host, Michael Magee. Thanks for listening to the Science and Beers podcast. Please help us out. Please tell somebody about the podcast. Please share it with a friend. Give us a review. Get on social media. Send us your questions. Send up any follow-up questions. If you have any burning science questions, send it to us on a social media post or on our email, scienceandbeers@gmail.com. Cheers to science.